Welcome back to the live stream. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Um, and hopefully for streams going forward, we're going to be doing something a little bit different as well. I forgot to move the alerts where I wanted them to be, which is to say right here. Right? Yeah, about there. In fact, I may want to make this a little bit smaller. We'll see. Something like that. There we go. So, what I wanted to do today was basically implement a new format for my live stream. Now that I have started regularly streaming for 2 hours 2 hours a day, every other day again, sometimes longer than 2 hours, what I thought I would do is basically have the first hour to hour and a half be the politics and analysis and chatting part of the stream. And then the second half, the next hour and half hour, be like gaming, where I play Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and carry that through to the finish line and all that. And just sort of have that as the norm, because I think it I don't know, it might help in the algorithm if my content is better like compartmentalized or itemized, to the extent that the politics segments are purely that, just me talking, and then the gaming segments can be just that. Right? Hello, Gotron. Welcome back. So for the first hour or hour and a half, it's going to be this. I'm going to be in the middle of your screen here. I created a whole new scene for this. And then the next hour and a half after that will be me playing, or hour to hour and a half, depending on how long I feel like the stream can go, will be me playing Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. That way I can do what I view to be better politics content that makes me way less tired from doing it. And I can play the game. I can have the cake and eat it too, as long as I cut it in half. Type shit. Also, I put in a new gradient for chat. There was a weird thing was happening where, as a product of the white to black gradient that I was using for chat messages and how they fade out, they were fading out way too early in the chat box. So it should be the case that the chat box can look a little bit more full before the messages start to fade out. But now with that said, it's politics time. It's Miller time. Not really. It is way too early to be drinking. Where do I want to start with this? There's a few things that have been happening. Let's start with the like really funny, unserious shit. And then we can work our way up from there. I was in a conversation with someone who told me there aren't there train passes in America? Train passes? No. No, those don't exist here. We don't have those. You have to buy a ticket through a third-party private ticket vending company with the private rail company. There's no high-speed rail in America. It's all low to medium speed rail. It's actually so bad. Like, I wasn't even aware that people didn't know this, because, believe it or not, I had been gaslit by some of the liberals in my life, and I say liberal in the derogatory sense here, that it's normal for a 20-minute bike ride to be an hour by bus. In an urban area, mind you. This was, again, when I was living in the DC area, and I was, like, had to go downtown for various things. I could ride my bike from the suburbs where I would have to, for various periods of time, brave it on the road with cars going 30 miles an hour, with no protection and only very spurious instances of bike lanes because this country's infrastructure is a joke at the best of times. And so I was considering, what if I just took the bus? The bus comes to the bus stop in something like 20-minute intervals or something like that. Is it frequently late? Yes, I've had this experience. But nonetheless, if I get on the bus, surely it's not that long of a bus ride to get half a mile from my house to downtown. A 20-minute bike ride, which is a 5-minute drive by car, was 50 minutes by bus. And I showed this to this person, and I was like, look at this shit. I got mad, and basically they said to me, yeah, that's normal. No, I assure you, this is not normal. This is an America thing. That this is the wealthiest country in the world, in the history of the world. We shouldn't have buses that are that terrible. And they're not even free. You would assume that with a bus that takes 50 minutes to take you half a mile, that it would at least have the decency to be free. No, you have to pay for that. I took the bus for the first time to go to the No Kings protest, the first one. Oh, that's cool. But yeah, that was certainly an experience that I had. Legitimately, there was this weird dynamic. Yeah, there are bus passes. That's a thing. There are not train passes because commuter rail is virtually non-existent unless you're in New York, DC, or Chicago or Seattle. And I mean in DC, New York, Chicago, or Seattle. There's no commuter rail in the cities like surrounding the bigger cities. You have to legitimately, if you want to take even interstate rail, not even like commuter rail, if you want to get on the train to go visit, I don't know, somebody that lives in another state, you want to take the train to Chicago, right? You would have to drive to DC from where we lived. We lived in a city outside of DC, right next to it. You would have to drive to the train station in DC and then take the train from DC to Chicago, which takes longer than if you just drove to Chicago. Yeah, I fucking hate the car society that we live in. It is purely like, it's the fetishization of you will live in the pod. You know how, like, conservatives all the time will talk about you will live in the pod, you will eat the bugs. I don't know why they're talking about that. They're the ones who fucking love car infrastructure. They're the ones who are telling us you will live in the pod, own nothing, and be happy, right? Because we can suggest, hey, maybe we should make it so that the pod is something you don't actually spend the majority of your life in, and you don't actually have to get in the pod to do anything. It can be, you know, you could be in a train, things could be closer together, so you can go outside of the pod and touch grass with your friends and enjoy a nice walk and actually see a decent chunk of the city and go to work on foot and not have to have a car, not have to get in the pod. You can rely on trains and buses instead. And conservatives are like, no, but we love cars. That's like a conspiracy or something that the elites want to control you by making it harder to control you. Cars are a vehicle of, ironically, cars are not a vehicle to get you from point A to point B in an urban setting, right? With rural infrastructure, cars are a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. When cars are the norm in an urban setting, with cars as the infrastructural master as opposed to the infrastructural servant, they are a vehicle to control you and your behavior, particularly your financial behavior. Look at how expensive cars are in the United States. Fucking 96-month loans? 96 months, that's what? 8 years. You have to go into debt for 8 years, up to, I think the standard, it's like 5 to 8 years of debt you have to take just to buy a car. That's your monthly car payments. That doesn't include fuel. That does not include fuel expenses. That's why everybody fucking fixates on gas prices in America. It is a vehicle for the fucking interests of the petrostate to control you, because now they are inextricably tied to your interests, because you depend on cars, because you are a slave to car infrastructure. How do we fucking liberate ourselves from these like gigantic wealthy oil barons from the Middle East and domestically? Easy. You start by building train infrastructure, bike infrastructure, walkable infrastructure, and literally setting out to make life more difficult for car manufacturers and car commuters. That way, it incentivizes people to do the easier, more efficient, more environmentally friendly, and more pro-social thing of either walking, biking, or taking the train. Legitimately, I don't think that having a car should be a viable option long-term if you live in a city. If you regularly have occasion to visit somebody outside of a city, or regularly have occasion to visit somebody who lives in the countryside outside of the city, then yes, having a car may be appropriate, particularly if you're traveling to a rural area, right? Because obviously those areas are going to be underdeveloped and would depend on cars as an infrastructural servant rather than the infrastructural master, if that makes sense. But legitimately, if you have a city the size of New York, the size of New York City in terms of population and density, I legitimately don't think cars should be a viable option for just living in the city. You don't have any plans to visit somebody outside of that. You live in the city, you work in the city. Maybe if you have family, they live in the city, your friends are in the city. It should be completely trains, buses, bikes, and walking. Legitimately, there should be like maybe a ring road that goes around the city. And if you want to go into the city, you have to walk or take the train or your bike or the bus. And I know that sounds crazy to the average American because, yes, a lot of Republicans are like, well, how am I supposed to run over protesters then? There are cities in the world that have existed for thousands of years that look like this. They're not even the biggest cities either. They could be big cities, they could be small cities. Let me give you an example right now. Chefchaouen. Random city in Morocco, city that I've been to. Maybe not so random. This is the city known as the Blue City. Because most of the buildings are painted blue or are built with blue materials. It's a very beautiful place. It's a city on a mountainside, pretty high elevation. In fact, when we were there, I was actually kind of restricted in my movement because I had altitude sickness. So I had to basically stay in our bed and breakfast, which was again, beautiful little hole-in-the-wall townhome with a nice rooftop terrace where we had breakfast every day. And there were, I think I've told this story that there were roosters. There were roosters on the roofs of the houses next to us that would wake us up every morning because they'd go all, and I would like, every now and again when I was up there, the roosters would start going off and I would yell at them to shut up. And that might have been one of the highlights of my trips just because it was so funny. I had half a mind to say, I can scream louder and then just go off. Man, that would have been funny. But that city is an example of what I'm talking about when I say that it should be mostly inaccessible to cars. There is one street where cars can drive in the city, and it is on, I believe, the eastern end. I think I could be remembering my sense of direction wrong, but I think you approach the city, you park your car at the base of the city. There's a small parking lot at the base of the city, and you leave your car there because in the city you walk around. That's how you get around the city. This is not a like super small city either. It's like 100,000. Let me see. Chefchaouen population. Small mid-size. Um, According to the latest data from 2024, the population of Chefchaouen is 46,000. So this isn't like a small town. It's like a mid-sized city. And you park your car at the base of the city, you leave it there, and you walk. There's one street that runs up like the side of the city, the eastern side, I think. And it runs north. And then the rest of the city you have to walk around in. Legitimately, I have never seen a comparably vibrant urban landscape in America outside of New York City. The largest and most culturally relevant city in America by a long shot is the only urban center I've seen in America that can match Chefchaouen, a city in Morocco of only 46,000. And that's because cars aren't allowed in the city. I think that was because of the necessity. It was because Chefchaouen is 1,000-year-old city or more. Chefchaouen was built before cars existed. And Morocco, being a third world country, has undoubtedly had a role in how slow the development has been there. But that's relevant because, cars haven't really been introduced. It's actually an unfortunate site elsewhere in Morocco where there is car-centric infrastructure, like in Rabat. And increasingly in Casablanca in some ways. It's an unfortunate cultural export of the United States that a lot of third world countries that we are on more or less good terms with have started to adopt cars and roads rather than buses and trains. You know? Society's going to have a panic attack when they can't use cars anymore. Don't worry, when that happens, they can walk to their therapist. I fucking hate America. I love America, but I hate America. And I hate Americans. But I love Americans, but I hate Americans. You know what I mean? You know how I feel when I say shit like that? Love-hate relationship type shit. Yeah, cars are fucking ruining people's mental health. A lot of people in the United States, it's no coincidence that there's a mental health crisis and a debt crisis and like looming financial crises in the United States. All these things are inextricably linked. The car infrastructure makes people more and more isolated. It deteriorates the social contract over time because the amount of social contact people have is lessened. The social landscape is eroded by the fact that like everybody has to live in the pod. And on top of that, cars are expensive. Car-centric infrastructure is prohibitively expensive. In fact, that's the reason that you really only see it in the United States and then in third world backwaters. Because if you're in a very backwater rural setting, the road infrastructure isn't being used enough to justify such frequent maintenance and thereby maintenance costs. But in the United States, because of how much our roads get used, because we only fucking built roads for some reason, we constantly have to sink money into road upkeep, into infrastructure upkeep regarding roads and stuff, to such an extent that it has actually plunged all of the rural, like, red states into a financial hole. Yeah, Americans, like, it's very jarring that Americans can't make this connection because they'll leave America, they'll go to Europe, and obviously they experience life in Europe to some degree. It's like, wow, it was great. You know, we walked all over the place. Maybe, you know, maybe there was a tour bus. You know, we could walk everywhere. There were these cool cafes and souvenir shops and like town squares and whatever, all within walking distance of our hotel. And it never once crosses their mind that that's just how a normal fucking society is structured. And at the end of it all, they're like, well, back to America where I can't walk anywhere and I have to fill up my car with petrol every week because of how frequently I rely on it to drive fucking 30 minutes to get to work. Which is insane, by the way. I have, like, you ask any European, commuting 20 to 30 minutes even, which is not that long of a commute by American standards, by car to get to work is insane. Like almost unheard of in Europe. And that's not even on the high end of how long people have to commute. I've heard of people who have like an hour or 2 hour long commutes, like in the United States, as in it takes you 2 hours to drive from your home to work, and then it takes you 2 hours to drive from work back home. That's 4 hours out of your day that you spend just driving every day. Media highway meme? Oh, like the just one more lane type shit? Yeah. Anyways, what was I even talking about that led me to crash out about cars? Oh yeah, that's right. This person who has also been outside of the country knows what a normal fucking city looks like because, you know, they've been there, tried to gaslight me into believing that public transit that shitty is normal. And I don't believe you. And you don't believe you either. Induced demand almost happened in Boston. Induced demand is something that needs to be mandatory reading in fucking high school for every American. Every American needs to understand what induced demand is and why you don't fucking build extra lanes or more car infrastructure when commuters get all upset that they can't, like, that they're getting into one traffic jam on their way from the suburbs to the city to work in an office and then go home and not interact with the urban landscape at all. And I guess the whole point of that was like, I don't want to hear any of that, like, well, it's different elsewhere. Like, yeah, no shit, it's different elsewhere. They don't have cars elsewhere. And induced demand, I think a really important thing to learn about induced demand is that it also works in the other direction. If you start inducing demand in other modes of transit, sure, people will use that. But if you reduce the amount of infrastructure that there is available for cars, people will not use cars more. People will use cars less. For example, I'm going to use actually an example that's familiar to me from back home. Let's say there is a 4-lane road. It's 2 lanes on either side. It's like it's a main street. And it runs through a certain part of town. On the one side, there's a school. On the other side, there's a neighborhood, right? This is like a main fixture. And at the edge of this neighborhood, across from the school, is a little corner store, right? In this kind of setting, people are going to use cars. That neighborhood is all single family housing, right? And the corner store is just a like low, legitimately, if you've ever played Sim City and you zone for like low density commercial, you get the one little store with a parking lot around it. That's what this corner store looks like, right? So you're imagining this kind of rectangular plot here. You know what? Actually, this is a great opportunity to illustrate what I'm talking about. Ooh, I get to use paint. Let's go. And I get to show you that I have a scene for this. Okay, let me show what I'm talking about with induced demand working actually in the other direction as well. Let's draw a nice rectangular thing, right? This is just going to be the general area I'm talking about, right? So we'll have a road Uh-huh. So let's say the road is kind of like this. Okay, yellow. That's not good. Do like that. Okay, good. Reduce demand. Yes, I'm gonna demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about, and I guarantee that if you were to talk about an urban planner, they would probably say that I'm butchering the explanation, but there is a version of what I'm talking about that's true, right? This is based on a real location. Um, so this is the road that I'm talking about. You've got 2 lanes on the right side, then you've got 2 lanes on the left side. Sometimes the roads will have the funky like middle lane where you turn off or whatever. And there might have been something like that on this road. But for now, we're just operating with this as the basic shape. And on this side, you have a school. Very good. You have a school over here, and then over here you have so the corner store is here. There's the store, right? And then back here, like over here, you have like you have the neighborhood. I'll just use text. Okay, very good. You have the school, you have the store, you have the neighborhood. This is a real stretch of land that exists. This is based on a real place. Okay, and then in parentheses here, we're gonna put single family / low density. There are no apartments in this neighborhood, right? Although there's some other stuff, but basic shape, right? Your objective is to make this place much more hospitable to human occupation. It's plenty good for cars, right? But cars aren't people. Cars don't have rights. People do. There's a parking lot in front of the store, right? Kind of goes around like this or something. Actually, it's more like this. There's like a parking lot there, and there's a parking lot in front of the school, kind of like this. I don't know why I'm doing that. I could just do this. There we go. Right? So we have parking lots. Here. What you could do, how induced demand works, is if you add an extra lane of road here, then this is going to fill up with more cars. And because of how expensive car infrastructure is, everything gets more expensive for everybody in this area, right? Because you've added more road, you've reduced how much land there is, but you haven't really done anything else, right? Let's assume that in this alternate universe, we are able to overcome the NIMBYs. We kick them all out of the neighborhood. Goodbye. We are replacing you with people who actually want to make life better, right? This is no longer single family homes. It gets zoned up. Let's say now this is here. Where's the text element? Let's say now this is low to mid rise apartments, right? There's still a school here. Most likely this school is going to still need this parking lot, right? And in the meantime, here's the parking lot. There's a lot more traffic on the road. So what do? Inevitably, there's going to be a demand. The people in this neighborhood, especially the people in the houses, in like the single family houses, sparkling image car wash. You are kind of getting at what I'm gonna say here, but they're gonna say something like they're gonna say something like more lanes. right? From these houses, which are low mid-rise apartments and single-family homes. Now that you've zoned up a little bit, right? Your job as the city planner is to, in the most politically tacit language you can muster, say, no, fuck you. If you're a good city planner, that's what you say. No more lanes. Absolutely not. So instead, what you do is you add a bus. Let's see. Plus. Let's draw a little bus. Great. Now you've added a bus. Now the people in these low mid-rise apartments can take a bus. Let's say there's a little, they put a little bus stop next to the corner store, right? The corner store starts getting more patrons because foot traffic is directed over this way, right? So then the store can get zoned up. Now it's a bigger store. Now there's apartments on top of it, right? More people live here, and you have some road capacity for buses, but Sparkling Image Car Wash, as you say, in order to make the place more livable, maybe now there's like noise complaints or something, you do a little something like this. Right? You shorten the street. Let's make it a little bit smaller. You do something like that. And the same thing on this side. Right? Let's draw the new edge here. So now the sidewalk can be bigger. And you still have the school nearby. And this can become a bike lane. And this too. So now you have functionally made this area habitable for 4 times as many people, in part by reducing the amount of road that there is. Because now there's only 2 lanes there's only 1 lane on either side of this road, but there's a bike lane. There's more stuff to walk to in the area, right? Yes, also way more accessible for wheelchair users. You know, grandma in her wheelchair, you can take her out on a nice stroll and not worry about her getting bulldozed over by a pickup truck going like 40 miles an hour. Maybe you put some traffic calming mechanism. You go like, you know, you make the road curve a little bit so that people have to drive slower, right? You put a sign, slow, watch for grandma, right? You know, this road gets smaller, cars get muscled out, and people are allowed to live somewhere, right? And this is supposed to be in an urban setting. Yes, 20-mile-an-hour speed limit with speed bumps. You know, you add a couple of those right here, particularly because this is a school zone. You know, speed bumps. There you go. Cars drive slower. There's fewer of them on the road. You have buses, which are a much more efficient mode of transportation. So that like, and buses don't drive as fast as cars. So you have more people in less space, which is way more efficient. And you can walk now. You can walk to the school. Previously, this place that I'm thinking of does have crosswalks. None of them are actually there's like one right here. And the rest are like completely elsewhere. Yeah, if you hit the speed bump too fast, your car explodes spontaneously. So now you have increased the population, reduced the carbon footprint, increase the economic efficiency with which that area operates. You have literally made life better in every measurable way for this little micro neighborhood, and you have done it by reducing how much car traffic is able or allowed to be in a given space at a given time. Yeah, and society used to be like this, and still is like this most everywhere else. And all throughout, again, all the people that say we need more lanes so more cars can drive. Nuh-uh. Do not listen to those people. Your job as somebody who wants the city to be better, you want to grow the city and make sure it's like economically sustainable and has like a manageable carbon footprints. People aren't suffocating. People aren't getting hit by cars or whatever. Low crime, low accidental death rate, whatever. Like, you're trying to be a competent urban manager of like city life. Your job is to ignore the people who drive cars at all costs. That is how you make a city better, by reduced demand, induced demand in the negative direction. Because we all know how regular induced demand works, right? Where you have a road that's like 4 lanes, right? And all of a sudden there's a traffic jam. Oh no, right? And then they say they like you get this. Fuck. This is induced demand, because then you add another lane. Great. People start using that lane. People start driving more. Oh no, now this one's gummed up too. Just one more lane, bro. Oh great, well, we added another one, same thing. We added another one, same thing. The only thing you accomplish by doing this is putting the state further into debt. But if you actually make the prospect of driving less appealing in an urban area, which it should be unappealing to drive in an urban area, like no shit, that's where people live, then the opposite happens. Less people drive because, oh no, the road gets congested. Literally, it is exactly the inverse. With induced demand, you add a lane, the road for a brief time gets less congested, which incentivizes people to drive more. If you subtract a lane, you remove one, all of a sudden, now the road's a little bit more congested, which means people will drive less. And this diverts demand elsewhere. If you're a good city planner and listen to and adhere to the maxim of never fucking do what the car commuters want you to do, right? Or just dodge that road entirely or drive elsewhere. Yeah, it makes people drive on this particular road less. That's how induced demands works in the other direction. And that gives you leeway to build railroads, commuter rail, buses, bike lanes, walkable infrastructure, upzoning, right? If people can't drive somewhere, right? Like, imagine you live in Houston, right? You're one of the poor bastards who lives in that fuck ass city that actually has very many cool people living there, but it is still a fuck ass city, right? Your house is over here, right? Great, that's your house. And then your office building is like over here, right? This is like 10 miles, right? Yeah. You have to, like, imagine you live in Houston. You have to drive 10 miles to get from your house to work. This is not an exaggeration, by the way. Houston and cities like LA are actually this big. For anybody watching who's not in America, you have to take this giant ass road. You have to drive to work. You have all these different lanes or whatever. What if one day one of those lanes gets removed? Uh-oh. Now it is actually infeasible for you to drive to work. The commute gets worse. So what happens? You have to find a different way to work. You have to find another way, right? Maybe you take a different road. Or maybe the demand grows. Hey, why the fuck do I have to drive 10 miles to get to my place of work where I go to spend like 8 hours of my day? What if instead there was something like, here, hold on. Instead, there was something like this. An apartment building, right? Let's boom, new mixed use apartment building next to this house in the same neighborhood, right? And instead of having to drive 10 miles to get here, now you can walk 0 miles to this little place down here, right? Or hell, it could even just be like I don't know, there's one of those, like, have you guys seen those fuck ass 70s office buildings like this? The ones that look like that? I'm about to move into a mixed use building soon. That sounds awesome. You guys know the, like, really weird looking 1970s office buildings? Maybe you just live next to one of those and then, like, oh, great, you can also walk 0 miles to that. There we go. So you remove the, like, you have to, whatever you do, you cannot have a walkable city and have room for cars in comfortable amounts. You have to do things, you have to develop infrastructure specifically at the expense of car commuters in order for a city to be livable for people, because cars are not people. Cars are, I don't know if Americans know this, but cars are inanimate objects that you avail yourself of to get from point A to point B. Why don't you just fucking build point B closer to point A? Well, that eliminates the road that I have to take with my car to get from point A to point B. You get me. You get me. The boss point. Thank you. There we go. We're back. That's true. A lot of the car-centric infrastructure, it serves to it serves to further atomization, which in many ways can be very beneficial to capital. Let me actually change this gradient real quick. Chat might disappear for a hot second because I realized I think I didn't change it to what I wanted. There we go. Oh, no. Okay, it's good. It's good. Yeah, that's the new gradient that I wanted to use. All right. Yeah, just build point B next to point A. Problem fucking solved. but a lot of the country was settled by homesteading. So point A and B and C were all really fucking far from each other to begin with. And a lot of the development that happened was very quick and unplanned. And when I say unplanned, I mean unplanned by the state. The only reason that car infrastructure was able to dominate in the way that it did is because the automotive manufacturing industry, the automobile industry, was doing plenty of planning. They were, as a business, trying to plan to expand into new markets, consolidate control over existing markets, whatever business type shit, right? They were planning that to have whatever transpired be compatible with their business interests. That was the plan that they intended to follow through on. It was, and the fact that the government and the public sector largely didn't have a role in that planning meant that like there was little to no pushback on the auto industry, and the fact that like the individualism in America through again homesteading, everybody wants to be their own fucking landlord, and it was part of this the genocidal project to like keep pushing the natives out of there, and it's so much shit contributed to America being a landscape dominated by car infrastructure, which is profoundly alienating. But the reason I went through all that is because I continually get mad in my head whenever I remember like seeing, oh great, it takes 50 minutes to get half a mile on a bus and 20 minutes to do the same by bike. And I showed that to this person and they were like, yeah, that's normal. I was like, you of all, like this particular person, I was like, you are literally the one person I should be able to go to with the reasonable expectation that it's not normal. When America collapses, it's going to collapse hard. Oh, yeah. The economic fallout is not going to be kind to this country. And speaking of, shit, I took up 45 minutes of my originally planned, like, talking head stream time just talking about that. I didn't even get to talk about the real economic collapse that is presently unfolding. It's a good thing I had a link for this one particular thing. There was other stuff I wanted to talk about, but I guess that's going to have to wait. Hello, Newswire. This is 4 days old at this point, but nonetheless. Let me see if I can corroborate this. This is from 5 days ago. Let's see, what is this Reddit post just referring to the... This might just be referring to the Newswire thing again. Let's check out Yahoo Finance. Recent Moody's analytics. Here, look. From Newswire, we have 23 U.S. states in recession, 11 on the brink, Michigan latest to tip into contraction. From Moody's. This is citing the Moody's report, but it's like 1 day more recent. This is consistent with what Yahoo Finance is reporting, which from 5 days ago says that 22 are in a recession. So we've confirmed that this is credible to some degree. Speaking of financial collapse, let's look at the states that are in a recession or near a recession. Right? Red states are in red states. States colored in red here, red states means something different, are in a recession. Washington, Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Kansas, Illinois, Michigan, Mississippi, Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, not Vermont, New Hampshire, the evil Vermont, and Maine. I'm in the yellow state of Alaska. Shout outs to Alaska. Alaska is on the brink. Treading water is not a good thing, I assure you. This is like, you are in dicey economic territory, but it's not considered a recession yet. That category is Alaska, Hawaii, California, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Ohio, New York, Vermont, and that's actually it. The green colored states, I'm dead in MA. Damn, I'm sorry. The green colored states are states that according to Moody's are like fine. Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, and Pennsylvania. I don't know if I mentioned Pennsylvania. You put a picture of red and blue states right next to this. I feel like that would be kind of like a non sequitur because one thing I wasn't expecting is that this doesn't very neatly track onto red states and blue states. For example, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all blue states. Maryland and Virginia, blue states. New Jersey, blue state. But then you go over here, Iowa, South Dakota, Kansas, Wyoming, Montana, red states. Mississippi, red state. West Virginia, really red state, right? It doesn't seem there. It seems to be not necessarily connected to that. And I think this is because the Moody's analysis here of whether or not states are in a recession incorporates data centers. Texas is red, right? Texas has historically gone to Republicans, but if you're looking purely at a breakdown of voter registration, Texas is a purple state and leans blue. But Republicans hold enough power in government to consistently simply strike enough Democrats off of the voter rolls and throw out their ballots to keep it a quote unquote red state. It's not perfect, but it will at least show a sign. I don't think that red versus blue states here would be would like have any correlation to this. But unless if you mean the data centers and stuff, then yes, this is a sign. In fact, the reason I bring up that I think Moody's is incorporating data centers into their analysis here, like this isn't excluding data centers or whatever, means that the real picture is actually a lot worse than this, right? Because we know in states like to name three off the top of my head, Arizona, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, three states that have a lot of data centers that have been kind of the hotbed of the extremely unpopular, unwanted data center development that is profoundly economically parasitic, has been destroying local communities with air pollution, water pollution, excessive use of energy, and the latest one I saw, Texas is included in this too, being like excessive traffic deaths and an increase in traffic disasters, also Louisiana. One, two, three, four, five states that are, according to Moody's, economically fine or treading water. The picture is actually much, much more dire, right? So this is a like, it's not based on completely nothing. This is based on how much line is going up. But the line going up includes data centers. If you exclude data centers, I have no doubt that most of these states would probably be shaded in red, and the remaining ones would likely be yellow, right? Legitimately, the only states that I could imagine would be green are states that are already not green. You know, like you think about where all the wealth and economic activity is concentrated in the Northeast, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, this like big Northeastern corridor of urban development, or in the Northwest, you have California, Oregon, Washington, very wealthy, prosperous states, or around the Great Lakes where there are urban centers, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, right? You would expect those states to be doing well. With the exception of Wisconsin, none of them are doing that well. Imagine when the AI bubble pops. It's starting to pop. People are in the investment world are like selling off all their investments in AI and shit. Also, this is an unfortunate camera position. I don't know. Maybe I should have it like, I don't know. expect more of these states to follow suit. Like Moody said, look, one day apart from Yahoo Finance, Moody's report says 22 states in or near recession. One day later, that number is now 23. This was news 5 days ago. And a day after that, they were like, hold up, we got to add another state that is not fucking okay. You know? Are you ready for the American century of humiliation? This is just one of the many ways that America is going to be humiliated, but yeah, imagine the shutdown lasted longer. God, the Democrats had such unlimited leverage to be like, we're not budging until you capitulate to our demand that like ACA subsidies get continued in full. Otherwise, this country's like instantly going in the shitter. And all that only for them to cave for no reason. And then Republicans discover, oh shit, those ACA subsidies were actually like essential for the country not falling apart. And so then they put the ACA subsidies back, or are planning to put the ACA subsidies back just under a different name. So like Democrats capitulate for no reason, and then Republicans get rid of the ACA subsidies for no reason because they discovered later, shit, we actually needed those. This is why I say that both parties don't actually believe in anything and are thus related, like reduced to aura farming based on either virtue signaling or vice signaling, depending on the party. You know? Type shit. Anyways, I said we would like start with unserious stuff and get to serious stuff, but I started with something serious, so now let's do something unserious. I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna look for something else. What was it? Oh yeah. Zoom out to 100%. You guys see this? Let's have it at 125. That's a good zoom level. Let our people go. Mamdani victory spurs Staten Island polls to renew push to secede from New York City would be bigger than Miami. This isn't gonna happen, but it would be so fucking funny if it did. Yeah, the common takeaway being like, all right, shit, People's Republic of New York, and then Republic of New York is Staten Island. God, that would be so funny. This would objectively be good for New York too, by the way. I hope people realize that. Staten Island has like, where's the I'm not doing the AI summary or some shit, but Staten Island has like a much smaller economic footprint, like economically productive footprint than the rest of New York City. Legitimately, the other boroughs of New York City financially carry Staten Island as a burden on their shoulders, right? This would economically destroy Staten Island, which is part of why it's so funny and part of also why we all know that they're not going to fucking do it. Because these people are full of hate in their heart, but they are just sane enough to realize that they can't act on that if it doesn't actually hurt anybody else. Because this would only hurt them and not hurt the rest of New York City, they're not going to do it. You know? So basically, they're just going to be molding and seething for nothing, and the whole world will know that Staten Island is full of bitches. It's so good. It's so good. Fill it right up into my veins. You know? In fact, I think this exposes the soft underbelly of NIMBYs in this country, where if you just kind of bulldog through them, they'll get all fucking soy and Reddit at you like, you can't do that. and they'll get all pissy like, we're gonna secede, and you're, you kind of stand there like, good, then you won't have any relevancy or influence on our politics and won't be able to fucking make life worse for the rest of us and drain our tax money, because Staten Island is very heavily suburban and is thus a economic drain. And then they'll shut up because they realize they actually need the city to maintain the quality of life that they have currently. They want life to get worse for everybody, but they don't want life to just get worse for them, if that makes sense. So they kind of sit down and shut up and grumble while everybody's life, including theirs, by the way, gets better. And they're like, we can't secede, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but it was really funny. It was so funny that like I felt like I had to mention it on stream, despite the fact that obviously the New York Post is a joke of a news outlet. That I like almost never report on from. This was just funny enough to put it into my attention. So. Do I want to stretch it a little bit further? I was planning to do, you know what? I don't want to make a liar of myself. I will do the React content that I was thinking of. I saw a video on Twitter from Mark Warner, who, by the way, is no longer my senator. I finally went over to the Department of Motor Vehicles and I got some identification stuff sorted out. So now I have an official state ID for the state that I live in. My address has been officially changed on state documents and I am registered to vote. So I'm no longer a constituent of Mark Warner or Tim Kaine, but Mark Warner is still an interesting character to me. I think that some of the politicians that engage more in state politics are interesting characters to me. Mark Warner being one of them. So that's how I'm going to justify initially covering this video. And the video was also on a very relevant subject, which is housing. Here, let's go to Mark. I bookmarked this this tweet. Where's my bookmarks? There it is. Let me, I'll go to this and then I will unbookmark it. All right, let's have a look. Obviously, because he's kind of a, like, uncharismatic, like, technocrat wannabe senator, he's going to be like ratio. It doesn't matter how correct anything he says is. He's going to get ratioed by the most right-wing fucks on planet Earth. But here he says, this is a crisis. We need it to make it easier for Americans to afford their first home. Off the bat, already, interesting contradiction here. Yes, this is a crisis. But he focuses immediately on home buyers, despite the fact that I know from looking at data from the state of Virginia, 2/3 of state residents are not homeowners, but rather renters. Despite the fact that so much of the landmass of a state, even as suburban as Virginia, are covered by single-family housing developments, that still only accounts for 1/3 at most of the state's population. The other 2/3 are renters, or like, I think it was like 2/3 are renters and then 1/3 are either homeowners or like dependents or something. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how they counted that, but he posted a video. Here are some of my ideas. I want to watch this.
We got to build a ton of new homes.
This is the point where I realized I wanted to watch this on stream. I did pre-watch this. He's not a real live streamer. She, not a real live streamer. Got him. right? I still go by any and all pronouns, so whatever is fine, but not a real live streamer. I did pre-watch this, but I think it warrants engaging with. How long is the video again? It's 5 minutes. This shouldn't be too bad. Take it away, Mark Warner.
We got to build a ton of new homes. And here's why.
Already, I kind of liked this. It was like, oh wow, look at that. He's using his sort of policy wonk image to be like, let me draw some goofy things on a whiteboard. It's kind of nice. I kind of like it. And yes, we do need to build a shit ton of new housing.
We are literally looking at a country where we're about 3.7 million homes short of meeting basic supply. And that supply is extraordinarily expensive. If we look at median income, it's really been pretty flat. On the other hand, during this same period, over the last 25 plus years, the normal house price has gone up 6 times. Now it costs 6 times the amount of your average income to buy a house. At the same time, we've seen that the number of housing starts have cratered up and down a little bit.
I'll let him finish this part, but then I have some things to say.
I can't afford a house. Well, maybe at least I can rent. Well, I got to tell you, renting doesn't cut it either, because unfortunately we've seen rental inflation go up dramatically. So what do we got to do?
Decent enough framing of the issue. This is where I have some disagreements, but nonetheless, I feel like I would kind of rather be fighting against, like, I mean, you know, socialist bias coming in. I would rather the ideological struggle be between socialism and this kind of liberalism, rather than socialism and the kind of liberalism that Mark Warner and his colleagues actually represent, which is like kind of nothing. But this is something, right? Very pertinent to point out. Nobody can afford a home. Nobody can afford to rent. And, you know, the housing industry is like not really doing anything. I do think the first major flaw in this is that you sort of like point to housing starts, right? This is like startup companies. This is like the real estate industry. Oh no, businesses aren't doing good enough business, right? Does that make sense? He's a very he's much more of a business-minded person rather than simply looking at economic metrics and outcomes, which, I mean, to his credit, obviously these are economic metrics right here, but the core problem is that, you know, like he said, housing construction is not good, right? This graph, in my opinion, should have been how many houses just have been built, how many homes have been built, whether they be apartments or single family or whatever. Nonetheless, you know, you get from his characterization of the issue, oh shit, this is a massive problem.
Well, we got to introduce legislation. And candidly, I've introduced a ton of bipartisan legislation that can get this problem solved. Let's start. First of all, not even at the federal level, we need state and local governments to cut out some of the unnecessary and burdensome red tape. It shouldn't cost tens of thousands of dollars to get your house permitted and take forever.
Extremely rare example of me agreeing with a neoliberal that there needs to be some degree of deregulation. But yes, at the state and local level, particularly with the processes of permitting and zoning, it takes an extremely long time. And in fact, I think I'm adding zoning onto here. This is simultaneously something that I am agreeing with him on and a flaw I am critiquing him for, which is that, yes, permitting fucking sucks. I think, you know, if you've seen like Zoran Mamdani's videos from the campaign trail, you would know that like one of the things he talked about with why halal is $10 is that like there's such an excessive queue for permitting to be able to sell food from a food truck because it's all like privatized and whatever. And that absolutely needs to be fixed. The other thing is that when you see a suburban housing development, let me actually go to Google Earth so I can show you what I'm talking about. Google Earth Pro, take it away. It's going to open up here. When you see, let me just zoom in on a random, let's go to Virginia. This is the state in question. Here's a city right here. What city is this? Richmond. All right, great. Richmond. What do you got? You see all of this suburban shit. You see all of this blight taking up so much landmass. All of these winding electrical trace looking roads here that aren't laid out on a grid. Even a lot of this stuff. All of this is single family housing, right? Look at that. In Richmond, Richmond is the capital of the state of Virginia. This is the state capital. And it looks like this. Right? And the reason for that, this is where zoning becomes relevant. Local laws and zoning regulations say that this land is only allowed to look like this. For any of these tracts of land, this land zoned for single family housing, you are not legally allowed to build anything on this land if you are a building developer that is not a single family home. You're not allowed to build mixed use zoning. That's not allowed in places like this. And it is because of state and local regulations. Zoning isn't decided at the federal level. Obviously, Washington is there, does fuck all for most of the time, and the country is this fucking big, right? But you zoom in on even one of the most populous states, on one of the most populous areas in a very wealthy state, and it looks awful, and it feels awful to live here. I would know because I lived not in Richmond, but in a suburb in Virginia for a long time. And it fucking sucks. You know? Compare that with, what's a place that has a bunch of mixed use zoning? I'm going to go to South America again. Let's check out Lima. Lima is the capital city of Peru, but it is not as wealthy as as most states in the United States, right? At best, you're looking at maybe half of the per capita wealth. Let's have a look. Random street right here in Lima. Oh, look at that. That's a church. There's a church right there. That's an apartment. Very good. You can walk from the apartment to the church. Let's see what's down this street. They're praising Jesus. All right, very good. Thank you. There is, let's see, there's a garage here. This goes into the apartment. This is a side street. Oh, what's this? Is this? No, I think that's just another house. I was going to say, is that mixed use zoning? Oh, here it is right here. Look at this. Tiny little food market. Look at that. It's really stretched. You can see they're selling fresh produce in there. Look at that. Just on this one street. Apartment buildings, a church, and a little market. This is what a normal city looks like, right? And look, when you're walking down the street, it feels very much like it's built at a human scale. You as a person feel about the right size for this environment, and this environment feels about the right size for you. People live up there. Look at that. There's apartments up there. Not the greatest looking, right? This is not a super wealthy area, right? It's in Peru, which is not as wealthy as the state of Virginia, like on average. But then look down here, little grocery market. There's a church at the end of the block over there. There's more apartments. There's let's see, what else? What else? Oh, look at that, a little corner store. And there's a chair right there. Somebody could sit outside the store. It feels like a real fucking city. Sometimes there are schools in the church, like actual academics. The point is it's human design. Yes, yeah, that's true. I didn't mention that. That kind of slipped my mind. But yes, sometimes churches can also function as places, particularly for early childhood education. And for all other manners of education as well. Churches, particularly, I think this would be relevant for Peru because, like, Peru, very Catholic country, where churches occupy more of a community function, whereas in America they're treated more like businesses. You know, that church probably serves more functions than just one, right? So you have this like community center, you have a grocery market, you have a corner store, you have apartments on just some random side street that I selected in Lima, right? Shout outs to all my Peruvian brethren and sisterin. Meanwhile, in Virginia, specifically selecting for the state capital, the seat of government, in a wealthy state, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And look at this shit. This is not designed for humans. I don't need to zoom in to prove that, but I will. Let's have a look at this street. What's going on here? Oh yeah, that's great, dude. Look at this shit. These houses all look the fucking same. Somebody's having fun playing basketball right there. That's cool. There's no sidewalk, you may notice, either. There is nowhere to walk, except I guess you can walk on the grass. You would have to walk on other people's yards and on their driveway. You cannot walk. There's no sidewalk here. It's just the street and cars and houses that look the fucking same, built out of cheap bullshit. I wonder where the closest supermarket or even corner store is, Lamau. Oh, buddy, there's no such thing as a corner store in this neck of the woods. Where is the closest supermarket, though? I am kind of curious. Supermarket. We're just going to search. Fuck, I actually can't find where the closest supermarket is. I don't even remember where I was. Let's see. Mexican restaurant and market. There's a market here. This is like a mile or something like that. Shit, this might be more than a mile. High school there, bargain outlet, Catholic church. I'm not seeing a supermarket. Okay, there's a Food Lion. All right. Finally, we found the Food Lion. This is a supermarket. I was over in like here. You'd have to go woo. You have to get on this fucking highway to go to the supermarket. People with mobility devices just gonna have to risk death walking on the road, I guess. Yeah, or depend on somebody that has a car. If you have a wheelchair, you can't drive. Your legs are compromised enough that you have a hard enough time walking. If you have a cane, if you're wheelchair bound, you can't fucking drive. Anyways, that's another mini crash out on car-centric infrastructure. The point is that this is a rare instance where I will agree with Mark Warner, or any neolib for that matter, that local and state regulations, particularly regarding zoning, are absolute dog shit and need to go in the trash bin of history. Because the main reason that so many areas in America look like that suburban hellhole, and not like that random side street in Peru, which looks incredible, by the way. That brought back memories of Casablanca, where the side streets also look like that. In fact, it was almost identical in its design to the side street where our apartment was, where it's apartments, and then at the end of the street, there's a little corner store, and there's like a grocery store on the next block. You know? The reason that neighborhoods look like that in America is because there are local laws, state and local regulations that say that it is only allowed to look like that. When land is zoned for development, That's an example of like development planning where it's like, okay, we're going to highlight this area of land and say you are going to build such and such stuff here. The reason that suburban neighborhoods look like that and take up so much space is because they highlighted all of that fucking land. The local lawmakers highlighted all of that land and said, you are only allowed to build single family housing in this area. You're not allowed to build anything else. And then where there's a grocery store, where there's a random church or a random school, they drew like a tiny little circle, or they cut out a tiny little bit and said, oh yeah, you can build like a church here. And then the rest is just single family housing blight. What's this? Google Maps? Let me see this. This market is in the center of the neighborhood, which is awesome. Trains and buses stop here. Oh, that sounds awesome. More single family housing, which is unfortunate, but at least these are like closer together. Oh, look at that. Prep school. School. Stop and Shop. Western Union. Citizens ATM. Primary care. Health center. Okay, we've got some services here. Oh, dude, these are apartments. Nice. And there's new mixed housing, but Google Maps didn't update the area street view yet. Ah, that's cool. Yeah, where is this? Is this in Boston? Yes. Yeah, this is cool. This is not as good as what I was looking at in Lima, but like this is much, much better than that area in Richmond. It's still being in America, it's like not the greatest in terms of urban development, but like clearly you have more things here. Oh, look, there's a community center. If you live in one of these houses here, you can walk to the community center, you can walk to the Stop and Shop, and I guess, Sparkly Image Car Wash, like you said, there's buses and stuff that stop there. There's a health center. This looks like a good place to live. It is still kind of crazy that there's so much single family housing though. But it takes time to change that. What is this? Oh, look at that. Furniture store, cell phone store, clothing store, Bank of America. Yeah, there's stuff here. Income-based apartments. Oh, like affordable housing and stuff. I gotcha. No, I didn't mean to do that. Where's, okay. History, 3 tabs. Yes, restore that window, please. Thank you. But yeah, I agree with that for Mark Warner. Zoning needs to go.
Community, state and local government,
or rather, single family house zoning needs to go, particularly for like urban areas, but really everywhere. I really think that like if you're zoning for single family housing, it should be for somewhere that's like tiny, and suburban developments that are like that compose like this outlying stretch. Basically what I'm saying is urban sprawl shouldn't exist. Everything should be like ranging from low rise to high rise, but mixed development and like clearly meant for a human scale, or hell, even just low rise to mid rise, 10 stories and under should be like the standard for most cities. But I think like the single family housing shouldn't necessarily be the standard, Although again, there's some exceptions to that, where it's like there are small towns that have single family housing, but like they're close enough to each other that they functionally end up being townhouses, and they're like right in the downtown area, and there's shops next to them, or they're cottage industries, shit like that.
To cut out some of the unnecessary and burdensome red tape. It shouldn't cost tens of thousands of dollars to get your house permitted and take forever.
Also, NIMBYs are a huge obstacle in this kind of development cycle. They're like homeowners are a scourge on urban development, and I'm not sorry for saying that. The the fact that housing is governed by the logic of a market has made it so that if you own a home, you have an incentive to make the city worse because that makes housing more expensive, which you benefit from when you decide to sell your home, turn a profit, and go elsewhere. Like a parasite moving from creature to creature to leech resources from. You know? It causes people to act in like severely detrimental ways to the urban landscape, like really irrational ways, right? Legitimately, this is one of the areas where like local governments and state governments need to be able to just bulldog over the NIMBYs who are like, no, don't build affordable housing apartments here. No, don't build mixed use zoning. You know, I mean, shit. Remember, there was a video I made when I lived in the DC area about this guy, this local politician who was literally one such NIMBY, where I shit you not, one of the projects I researched the actual projects that he opposed. This guy who was running for local office in my area was campaigning on, I oppose XYZ project. What was XYZ project? Mid-rise mixed use affordable housing development with job training for disabled people and a much lower amount of parking spaces than was the average for developments in that area. And he was like, yeah, I don't like that actually. At a certain point, you have to just be like, okay, well then I don't like you and I'm going to do this anyway.
We need to encourage to work with our local partners to make.
I hate fair opportunities. Yeah, it was literally like, oh no, it'll ruin the natural beauty of the neighborhood. Meanwhile, the neighborhood in question was like 2 high-rise apartments surrounded by fuck-ass parking lots and single-family housing developments.
That happen fast. Second, there are a series of tools of the federal government that we can use. One of the most important is the traditional called LIHTC, the Affordable Housing Credit. We've got an.
Okay, this is where his analysis starts to really fall short. But nonetheless, there is something to engage with. Nobody cares about or likes this for like everything has to be a tax credit with modern liberals, right? Like it always has to be, oh, what about this tax credit for, see, look, tax credit, housing credit. It's all tax credits. None of this, like, this is the fucking problem with the solutions that liberals pitch for this. I'm glad that he's taking a stab at it at all, right? The fact that he's even trying here, bravo, thank you, actually, very cool. But like, please stop with the fucking tax credit. Look at this. This is like if you wrote a parody of liberalism. New Markets Tax Credit Extension Act. This is like a Marxist political cartoonist would have a hard time coming up with something that parodies liberalism that could match New Markets Tax Credit Extension Acts. You know? For shit's sake, you know, he was just talking about renters at the beginning of this. Why not expand rent assistance? Why not expand the construction of affordable housing specifically? You know? Why not beef up existing housing assistance programs at the state and local level? Why not use this federal legislative process to divert more funding into Section 8 and construct more Section 8 housing? You know, why not do all that? I'm sure you would agree with some of the stuff that I'm pitching as well. But fundamentally, I think that the excessive focus on these like bureaucratic, like, brain traps of tax credits where you're like, you have to get super microscopic and granular to figure out what cogs to inch to the left just a couple of centimeters to do a tax credit. Like, I feel like that comes at the expense of effort that could be spent on more direct and effective housing subsidy sort of things, you know?
act here that would increase this already proven tool dramatically.
I mean, shit, rent control. If you're going to build all that housing, rent control some of the housing that does exist. Designate more of it as affordable housing. Convert stuff into affordable housing that's like unused office space. And then have like with affordable housing, have the rents be stabilized so that when new housing gets developed, gets built, it can't like skyrocket instantly in price. Fun fact regarding my username, there are new mixed apartments literally across the street from a sparkling image car wash. Oh, that's fun.
This would add about 1.5 million new houses if we could get this passed. At the same
That is a big thing though. I'm not going to like refute the benefit of having 1.5 million additional houses. The issue is just, again, that like a lot of this stuff is tweaks around the margins, and a lot of those 1.5 million new houses would be houses and not apartments, and would likely not be rent stabilized or have any sort of price control on them, especially if he's going the route of tax credits
At the same time,
and home buyer credits.
We found that there are a number of communities where you've got aging housing stock. You know, we've seen communities where 1 or 2 blighted houses on a street might bring down the overall value of all the houses on the street. Yet if we could find a way to either rebuild a house or build a new one there, where you've already got water and sewer and broadband, you can bring down the cost. Well, that's where the Neighborhood Home Investment Act, again, bipartisan, that I've introduced. In addition,
I'm going to make a small aside about the fact that like you don't need to be worried about the value of a neighborhood increasing or whatever. Like, fuck the homeowners. Who cares if the line goes up for their house, particularly? Houses are something you're supposed to live in. But nonetheless, that's a small aside, because yes, if there's a neighborhood that is like poor enough that houses are being abandoned, dilapidated, and condemned, it is absolutely a like that's a gimme. You know, you can go and refurbish that house. You know, like he said, there's already water and gas and electrical lines that go to where that house is, like currently, or where it's supposed to be. You know, it is much easier to, you know, build a new house there, and you get the added bonus of like pumping some economic resources into the community to make it happen. But again, it's another like yes and thing, you know. But this is good. This in fact, the neighborhood homes investment thing that he was talking about is probably the thing I object the least to so far. Aside from the whole make the permitting process not torching your testicles every 5 minutes, and like get rid of the fucking you have to zone all of this for single family development type shit. These are the 2 big ones that I like so far.
in addition to this legislation, there's another tool that we've had that goes back to President Clinton's time, the New Markets Tax Credit. Again,
No, Clinton. No. Democrats cannot shake the spirit of Bill Clinton from their party. Or just don't feel like it.
this is a piece of legislation that needs to be updated, bipartisan, that could, again, add to housing supply. Recognizing as well
I noticed that he doesn't say anything about like what this is. It's just like, if I had to guess, it's going to be like, oh, if you build new houses here, we'll give you a nice tax credit. Random real estate business. Which is like, you know how I said that the ACA is the shittiest price control in history, but it is still a price control? This might be the shittiest housing subsidy in history, but it is a housing subsidy. And that is basically all I can say about it. Yeah, no, that is in fact all I can say about it. And I think if I'm correct about assuming that rural and historic tax credit being a similar thing, where it's like, oh, if you build in this rural or this historic district, we'll give you a tax credit. Fucking nightmare blunt rotation of economic, like, local policy making.
that a lot of housing comes in historic communities, we need to take the already existing historic tax credits and expand them. Right over here, Historic Tax Credit Act. Sometimes we think about historic tax credits in cities and suburban areas. But the truth is, heck of a lot of historic structures all across rural America, and they've not gotten their fair share. So working with Senator Capito, Republican Senator from West Virginia, we've introduced the Rural Historic Tax Credit Act that would make sure
everything has to be a tax credit with these people. Why not just direct funding from the state? And I say state in both the Marxian and United States Federalist sense. Why not use federal, state, and local funds to build stuff directly? Why do you have to say, oh, well, we'll give you a tax credit if the private sector does such and such? Why go to the private sector with this? Why be so deferential when dealing with such a problem? If the problem is of such a magnitude as he describes, which it is, the statistics are laid out right there, right above Mark Warner's head, that this is a dire generational economic problem. Why does every solution defer to the private sector that allowed this to unfold to begin with? Why? These policies don't match the urgency of the issue. Does that make sense? Like, oh, you can have a nice tax credit if you do such and such, right? That doesn't match the urgency of, holy shit, we are 3 million homes short of basic supply. Mortgage is unaffordable. Rent is unaffordable. Homelessness is a ongoing crisis, and Americans are absolutely going through it everywhere at all times. We need to fucking do something about this, right? Everybody will agree on how urgent the problem is with there not being enough housing and what housing there is being way too fucking expensive. So why doesn't any of this match that urgency, with the exception of getting rid of zoning regulations? Or getting rid of certain zoning and permitting regulations? Why is this all like, oh, well, we'll give some tax credits to the private sector if the businesses decide they want to build such and such here and here and here? Why is it that and not like, okay, we're creating new state and local funds, we're reinvesting in the state like fucking construction corps or whatever, or the local construction sector managed by the public and by the like city government and whatever, and we're going to like do this no ifs, ands, or buts. We don't give a shit about profit. We just need these homes to be built. Legitimately, the Soviet Union did a better job of addressing the issue of housing stock than I think this would do.
Those rural communities get access to rebuilding and preserving these wonderful historic structures. At the same time,
in fact, the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act is the only thing aside from zoning that I think has any degree of urgency comparable to the situation, right? Where there's kind of an implied urgency in, oh shit, these homes are abandoned and dilapidated. That's a gimme. We can just go in there and refurbish them, wash our hands and look at that. We're done. Brand new houses in these neighborhoods, right? And the fact that it's direct investment from state funds into these communities implies that it might not necessarily need to be just a fuck-ass tax credit,
We've got to also address not only housing supply, but we've also got to address, unfortunately, the racial wealth gap in this country. I've introduced, I think, a creative idea called the...
I'll hear him out, but I want to stipulate that I notice none of what he's pitched here, none of what he has mentioned has done anything to address the affordability of the housing stock, aside from what would be naturally affected by introducing new supply. Which is good, by the way. Build more housing. By all means, I will take this over nothing at all. If the alternative to this is nothing at all, then I'll take this. Thank you. Build more houses. But you have home buyer credit, neighborhood investment, tax credit, something, woke racial wealth gap, something. Which again, is a problem. Real problem, needs to be fixed. doesn't necessarily have the same degree of urgency as we are literally running out of housing in this country. And what housing there is literally is unaffordable, right? It's the same kind of means tested shit.
Say if you're a
I'll let
first-generation,
him
first-time home buyer
explain
and
what
you
this is.
qualify for a 30-year mortgage, we'll provide you a 20-year mortgage, which would literally double the amount of equity you'd have in that.
See, look, it's this fiddly neoliberal bullshit. If you're a first-generation home buyer, that's the first thing you have to qualify for.
Double the amount of your mortgage home buyer. If you're a first-generation, first-time home buyer.
First-generation, first time. That's the second hurdle you have to clear.
You qualify for a 30-year mortgage.
And if you qualify for a 30-year mortgage.
We'll provide you a 20-year mortgage.
And then it's not even a subsidy. They just give you a different mortgage.
Which would literally double the amount of equity.
And it's all from the perspective of increasing the amount by which line goes up. This literally just this does the maximal possible extent to not change anything about the incentives that lead to a housing crisis such as this, right? The fact that housing is a commodity, this simply says, oh, well, what if we make it so that you make money off this commodity faster? That's not going to help. There's probably all of 3,000 people in the entire state of Virginia that will ever benefit from the LIFT Act. This is not that many people.
You'd have in that house after 10 years. I think this is
after 10 years. That's, oh my God, dude. Oh my God. You see what I mean?
Very exciting idea. Takes on an issue.
It's not exciting, Mark Warner, but thank you for trying nonetheless.
That oftentimes is talked about, but nobody comes up with a solution. And finally, all this legislation, important, but if the overall cost of materials keeps going up, then all this legislation isn't going to get the job done. We've got to repeal the Trump tariffs. You think about the cost of lumber, drywall.
There's not much for me to say here because I've explained the effect of tariffs. This is another thing that I will unambiguously agree on. The United States is the one country in the world where you absolutely should not be doing tariffs. But Trump did those tariffs unconstitutionally, I might add. And so as a result, we get fucked for it because, yeah, a lot of those building materials we get from other countries. We do get lumber from the United States domestically. There are lumber operations in the Pacific Northwest. But even then, those use trucks which have had parts manufactured abroad, manufactured in China. There's so much about raw resource gathering and shipping and production that is globalized that these tariffs are going to have solely negative consequences for America because of the economic position we're in already.
Where does a lot of that come from? Canada, Mexico, other nations.
Yeah, Canada, Mexico, China, I think Japan for some of them.
These Trump tariffs are dramatically driving up the actual construction costs because
huge impact on housing market. Okay,
construction costs because the materials that go.
Expected to raise new home costs by 9,000. That's actually not that much, I don't think. In the scale of how much a home costs. But nonetheless, significant economic impact.
Together, we can actually take on this housing shortage in our country. We can build and rehab existing housing. We can give some exciting new incentives to create new houses, not only in urban communities, but again, think about those rural historic areas that could be revitalized as well. This problem is critical, and that's why I'm fighting for you.
I think that's the end of the video. Great, thank you, Mark Warner. Okay, I have mostly negative thoughts on most of those policies, which I laid out already. This ended up being a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but nonetheless. The reason I saw fit to look at this video at all is because, as you may have noticed, I fucking love affordable housing. I fucking love urban development and things like that. Yeah, the Lift Act would benefit like point zero. It would benefit a absurdly small number of people in Virginia. Um, but I think there's a benefit to looking at all this, which is that I feel like if you posed legislation that was a little bit more urgent than this to match the urgency of the problem, I do feel like you would get support from Mark Warner. I feel like if you went to him and you had like, look, going to the private sector is not enough. I would support your bill if nothing else got through, but like ultimately we need this version to pass too. And it was like, oh, you reinvest in the public sector, you start cutting the private sector out of this development, you increase the amount of affordable housing that's being built, you reduce the amount of like single family zoning in these cities and urban areas and stuff like that. I do think that he would support this because he's not talking like somebody who doesn't think that this is a problem. Mark Warner, in his coverage of this, doesn't strike me as somebody who doesn't believe that having a massive housing shortage is a problem. He just strikes me as somebody who's like a little bit politically unimaginative, or maybe politically imaginative in a very neoliberally autistic way. Does that make sense? Where like he's clearly very proud of some of these ideas, but I hate to break it to you, man, these ideas are like not all that good. It is very impressive that you came up with this from the perspective of understanding how a bureaucratic neoliberal system such as the United States works. But this ain't going to fix the housing crisis, dog. It's going to provide a reprieve for like a couple years, and that's it. You'll see a little bump. Maybe the supply won't be as big of an issue in 10 years' time if this gets built. But all the while, none of that is necessarily going to be affordable housing. So the costs are still going to skyrocket, right? This is the one of the problems with liberal YIMBYism and to an extent liberal NIMBYism. A lot of this stuff still compromises to the NIMBYs of the world. Not a single time, only in the rent section with this graph right here, this is the only time that he mentioned by name apartment buildings. All the rest of it was local regulations, home buyers, tax credits, you know? Recommendations check. Brian F. Very cool. Vouch. VG Bootcamp. Lath. Corbett. How Money Works. I don't know why this is here. I don't think I've ever watched this channel. Some Pokemon stuff. This is almost exactly the same thumbnail as mine. I didn't even realize that when I was making my thumbnail. Oops. Thank you, Mark Warner. Despite all the negative things I had to say about this video, I will still say thank you, Mark Warner. Very cool. Gold star for if this kid is in my if I was like an economics teacher, if I was an economics professor even, and Mark Warner was my student, I would have to give him an A on knowledge alone of like local bureaucratic processes and shit like that. Like, holy shit, you know, clearly he knows directly the things that he's talking about. He knows about tax credits. No, he could probably unironically do the Trump thing where he's like, nobody knows more about tax credits than me. The only thing he doesn't know about tax credits is ironically maybe one of the most critical things, which is that they don't really work when you're solving this big of an issue. You know? A for effort though. Good shit. Build more affordable housing and do rent stabilization. And also fuck all those NIMBYs. I don't like them. They are also a blight on every city in America. Cut the segment. And now that I've done that, I can actually launch this. I may not be able to do this for so long. I'll probably go to 2.5 hours or something like that. But I did want to do this for like the latter part of stream. It's just gaming. Medic gaming. What's here? Info. Max Elixir. I think I already checked the jobs list. It's just me and Angles thus far. No money. I think I checked all of these already. Yeah, I did. Okay. Getting a random mission to have a friend area is gonna be rough. I'll tell you that much right now. Who was I? It was Cooper, right? Yeah. I forgot to change the category. Let me change this back to Pokemon 3 Dungeon. Red Rescue Team. There we go. Very good. Mystery Dungeon. Yay. There we go. Stream updated. Join the team. Very good. We are going to go to Mount Freeze, I think. Unless, let's see, Fiery Field. No, I don't think I want to do that. I just want to progress the regular story. If this Mount Freeze thing doesn't unlock another friend area job, then maybe I'll go to Fiery Field or something like that. Oh, Dodrio is the client. Oh boy. Oh shit, if I have a escort, then I'm probably gonna have to just book it to the stairs as soon as I see them. Because I really do not want there to be any chance of them like running off on their own. Like what almost just happened there. Get out of here. I'm gonna have to figure out my webcam too. Ordinarily, I have it on my other monitor so that it looks like I'm looking that way at the game. But for the purposes of looking at chat, I had it on this monitor. Maybe what I could do is just no, if I have it here, I'd be looking to the right, which means when I have my face on the main screen, I would look like I'm looking away from chat. I don't know what I'm going to do about that, honestly. Fourth floor, pretty uneventful so far, which is good. I don't want this to be particularly eventful. I was gonna say cue the monster house as I say that, but I don't think you can encounter monster houses in Mount Freeze. I think that's a phenomenon that only happens in other dungeons. Well, goodbye, Shelgon. You just got evaporated. I'm picking up a lot of reviver seeds. Monster House, the film, traumatized me as a kid. Oh, that movie! I remember seeing ads for that movie when I was little, and I actually had a similar reaction. I was like, I don't want to go see that. That seems like really scary. This was back when like, God, it sounds so sad to say. This was back when like going to the theater was a thing that people still did with their families. Like, you know, instead of just watching YouTube or whatever. But I remember that being on like on all the ads and previews and stuff when I was in, I think, elementary school. And I was like, that looks scary. I don't want to watch it. But then like years later, I mean, like I was 20 something already. I remember like film is 19 years old. That's crazy. Yeah. That is pretty crazy. It's 19 years old now because I remember it was like, oh, new scary movie for kids. You know, in retrospect, it's pretty obvious that like it was a scary movie that was meant to be for kids. Like it's supposed to be scary, but kids can watch it, not like one of those like, oh, haha, it's a spooky movie, but actually it's just like young adult slop where people are fucking and then a guy with a giant knife comes and kills you, you know? When I was in like after college, I started getting more stuff in like my YouTube feed recommended that was like, oh, you know, revisiting such and such movies, you know, like animated movies. Yeah, it was like family friendly horror, which is not something you see very much anymore. A lot of horror likes to make a show of not being family friendly. But it is possible to do a family friendly movie that's very scary. Um, when I started getting recommended videos like that, one of them was Monster House, and I remember looking at it, and I was like, "Yeah, wow, this movie wasn't very good, huh? Like, was it?" I didn't really hear anything about Monster House after its release. I kind of realized when watching that. I remember a lot of the ads leading up to it, but I didn't remember anything about what happened after the movie release. Long stream or 2 hours like before? Longer stream. Probably 2.5 hours or something like that. I don't remember anything that like happened after that movie came out in regards to that movie. Probably because there wasn't that much that happened. People didn't really talk about it. Because it wasn't that good. You know? I'm sure kid me would have still found it scary. Oh, goodness. I promise I'm not actually that tired. Whole new layout? Yeah. I've got the nice overlay. I fixed the chat gradient so the text should be visible for longer, so it feels like more of the chat box is being utilized. Gotta ask why you sound so dead inside. What? The fuck? What do you mean? Why do I sound so dead inside? I've been using my voice a lot. That's crazy. I mean, if it's the voice training you mean, then I've been voice training, but actually maybe that does have something to do with it. Like I'm using my voice in a way that it's not, that I didn't used to. That might be making my voice tired, like more than it would usually be. I don't know. I don't know. Wait, what am I doing? I said I was going to take the stairs as soon as I found them. It was silly me. Haha. That's true. I spent a lot of time earlier flaming Senator Mark Warner from Virginia and like anti-urban design. I probably spent the majority of the stream crashing out about how fucked up suburbia is and how like really bad American urban planning is. So that probably took a toll on my voice. It probably has something to do with it. Also, I've been having to make a lot of phone calls lately. I'll tell the full story when all's said and done. It's not quite said and done yet, but there's quite a story there. Out of breath and higher pitched. Yeah, that's I've been voice training to feminize my voice. I will leave the dungeon, in fact. I've been I think part of the reason that like my voice got so tired is number one, as Sparkly Image Car Wash said, I spent a large portion of the stream going off on like American suburbs and zoning and shit. But also, I haven't been doing my voice exercises super consistently. There's like a set of exercises that I go through repetitions of to make it easier for me to do a more feminine voice. But I didn't do them, I think, yesterday or today. Maybe I'll do them later. And, you know, if you try to exercise a muscle without, like, stretching or doing exercises to, like, warm up beforehand, it can not go that great. So it might be that. Pelper, what do you got for me? And then he fly away. Check mail, Thunderwave Cave. Oh, that was just my friend area. There it is. Yes. I saw it. I instantly grabbed it. What was it? Sinister Woods? Yes, it was Sinister Woods. Okay. If I find another friend area mission, I will undoubtedly take that over something that I have presently, but otherwise I'll just go to the one place. You know the one. Sinister Woods. Nope, no friend areas here. Alright. Sinister Woods it is. Ah. I don't need more than one stamina band. I can just sell those. Also, I'm pretty sure I have enough special bands already. Okay, that is what I want to put back. I do not want to store anything else. I do want to take some other stuff, though. Yeah. Special bands I have 4 of. Purple Joey! Give me that. Send me that. I need that. I want that and I desire that. Or something. I don't want the merchandise today. Sorry, Kekleon. The only bank in the world that I trust. That's not actually true. There's one other bank that I trust, and that is Congressional Federal Credit Union. Thank you. High spots on chess.com. Completely different levels of chess knowledge. I have chatbot AIs. Oh, that sounds fun. I hope you prove how big your brain is by beating everybody in chess or something. Let's see. Lowest and highest chess.com bots have already been beaten by cheating chat bots, being Gemini and DeepSeek. Oh yeah, that's right. You set up the chatbot AIs or whatever to be allowed to cheat at chess, and it produced some like pretty funny outcomes. Wait, I didn't sell the things that I was gonna sell. Let me do that. No, I don't. Don't sell all. Oh man. King takes king move by the chatbot goes crazy. You know, when I was a kid, I thought that your king could take the other king if it was your turn. I didn't realize that if it was one king next to another, the king literally couldn't kill the other king. Because in my mind, it was like, okay, well, the objective is just to kill the king. And the king is a chess piece on the board that can kill other pieces. So I guess, like, if you would never want to do this, but if you somehow got the 2 kings next to each other, whoever's turn it is would just win because you could kill the one king with the other one. But no, apparently, when I was like, I think it was sometime before college I learned this. You just can't do that in chess. It's like part of the rules. I have money now. I can buy friend areas. What's Alakazam doing here? That text is not in the original game because this game came out before Generation 4. I didn't learn the difference between check and checkmate till I was 14. Really? $5,000. Very good. Yay, I can go to Energetic Forest. I will add... Oh, wait. Oh, right. It was 7,800, not 8,800. I misread the numbers. What's the term for that? It's like dyslexia is the reading disorder where you look at certain letters and your brain kind of mixes them up. There's a different one for when you read numbers and your brain kind of mixes them up. I don't have it, I don't think, but there are people in my family that do. Like, they have a hard time reading numbers in certain contexts because the numbers will get jumbled up. But with words, they're, like, more or less fine. That's the dirtiest shit I could imagine. In the second game, the rook took the queen, and then the queen spawned back in the board, taking the rook, putting the king in checkmate. Dyscalculia, thank you. That's what it is. Yeah, literally, they do the Marvel as type shit. She's standing right behind me, isn't she? And then you get jump scared by the queen. Jump team. Fucking Fist of the North Star type shit, yeah. Omae wa mo shinderu. Nani? I feel like they didn't intend for Fist of the North Star to be as funny as it ended up being. just a hunch. Also, there was some anime that I watched before watching JoJo and before like knowing some references from Fist of the North Star. And then I actually watched some anime after understanding what some of the references were. And like every anime I realized was filled with so many JoJo and Fist of the North Star references that I didn't realize before. And I'm so glad that I know them now because it's actually like a treat to just see random anime that are like not at all related reference that shit. You know? I've also seen some anime with Metal Gear references, which is absolutely wild. Again, like anime that have nothing to do at all with Metal Gear. Like not even remotely. Okay, moment of truth. Let's hope that this Sinister Woods mission gives me Sky Blue Plains. Okay. I'm asking the people I know for anime that I should watch, since I really want to try anime for once, but I don't know where to start. Okay. I'm going to relay some experiences that I had watching anime, then I'll recommend something. The first anime that I watched was, well, discounting the anime that you get on American TV as a kid, like the Pokemon anime and shit. The first anime that I really watched was Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. But that one is long as fuck, and honestly, it was difficult for me to watch through it just because of how long it was, how long it dragged out. I tend to prefer the shorter anime. One anime that ended up being kind of like my go-to recommendation is Hozuki no Retetsu. Let me see. Yeah, in English it would be called Hozuki's Cool-Headedness. It's 2 seasons, I think, with like 13 episodes a season. It's not particularly long. And it is a seinen anime. It's like meant for a young adult audience. It's very nice. I quite like it. Yes, Hozuki. Hozuki. That is an anime that I would recommend first thing. That is not that hard to watch, I think. Because a lot of times, like, people recommend anime that's really fucking difficult to watch for one reason or another. Whether it's, like, frankly not that good, or whether it's just really long. Like, I've seen some people recommend as first animes, like, JoJo's, which I cannot stand by. As much as I fucking love JoJo's. You know, I've seen people recommend, like, Bleach and Naruto and One Piece, which have, like, 1,000 episodes each. I've seen people recommend like Demon Slayer, which again has like 100+ episodes or something like that. So usually I'm not a fan of that kind of recommendation paradigm. Um, yeah, and I think I just generally tend to like the shorter anime on the whole anyway. I don't know. Sometimes I don't necessarily gravitate towards the anime that have really high stakes. I feel like there's some sort of sometimes there can tend to be something that gets lost in the big flashiness of it. Whereas with the slice of life anime, it's like you kind of have to be interesting in some fashion that isn't just the stakes of the anime. I don't know. I could just be making that up out of thin air. For one reason or another, I like the anime that's not as long. Another good one that's really short is Way of the House Husband. Definitely start with season 1 on that one. If you're gonna watch it at all. I don't know why you wouldn't start with season 1, but like, yeah. Same go for other movies and series. Series mostly. Movies I usually am okay with. Sometimes I won't gravitate towards franchises that much for a similar reason. But if a movie is long, that's usually okay because a movie tends to have to be a self-contained story more so than a show does. Like a show in total will have much more runtime than a single movie. But yes, for series, definitely, that's for sure. In fact, I've developed a habit. I think I've mentioned this on stream, where I will actually avoid watching a series if it isn't finished yet, because I really don't like, or if it doesn't have a definite end date where it'll be done and then no more sequels, whatever. Because I don't like when the series kind of drags out and then jumps the shark at some point. I really don't like that, because then it just kind of feels like it's wasting my time, you know? That's kind of the reason that when I watched Andor, I actually just out of habit, I just waited for all the episodes to be released for the most part, or for them to say like, yes, we're definitely finished with this, and the last episode will air here, and then there'll be no more after that. That's going to be the whole series, because then it's like ends right where like Rogue One begins or whatever. And then I watched it. New Dominique. Gotta be something over here, right? I guess not. Why does Claude take so long? Oh yeah, the chess stuff, huh? Oh shit, I gotta check the hours for the library. I gotta go print some stuff. I don't have a printer in my home, so I have to go to the local library to print things. There's some shipping labels that I have to print. Again, related to that story that has been going on in my life specifically that I intend to tell on stream at some point that just isn't quite finished yet. Also, given that next week is Thanksgiving, American holiday that happens towards the end of November, I am not going to be streaming for probably most of that week, because I'll be with family, most likely. I'll definitely be with family. I just would. It's just the most likely I won't be able to stream part of it. Rescue missions on the 10th floor. Nothing here? Oh, okay. Hello, Cascoon. Money. 496, that's not bad. That's kind of strange how it just kind of... how it wakes up like that. Like, bolts awake. Oh, all three of these Pokemon are asleep. Oh, wait, no, not asleep. Stationary. Are they all... They are all the Wurmple second stage evolutions. Huh. Okay. I really like, it sounds weird, but I really like that there's some Pokemon that just have really bad base stats or just like really below average base stats because it's like, it almost invites the challenge of like, can you make this work? You get over there so that you don't get completely murked. You know, I actually even, I did a, when I was in high school, I did like a little personal math thing where it's like, oh, how much better, just in terms of base stats, right? Not even accounting for like typing, abilities, and movesets and whatever. How much higher of base stats do Pokemon have that appear on like Victory Road in the late game than appear in the early game using the most evolved forms of those Pokemon? And the difference wasn't like that big. It was smaller than I was expecting, but I feel like that could have very easily been a product of like how I defined first route and like end game or whatever, which routes I was selecting to pull from. I don't know. I may even want to do that again sometime. That might be interesting. Oh, well, there's Flygon right there. Easy. Yes, I do want to leave the dungeon. Give me that friend area. Give me that shit right now. Come on. You know you want to. Yes! Finally, sky blue plains. Oh my god. Ah. What does the guidebook say next? It's like... Talk to okay, then talk to Arbok. Sure it's Arbok, not Ekans? Would have been recommended so far? All right, let's go see if there's an Arbok around here somewhere. Oh yeah. Okay, this is that's what you need to activate. Where did they go? Not over here. Are they down here? No, that's just Makihita. Oh, would they be over here? No, okay, I think I have to just pass a day for them to like come back. So let me see what jobs I have. Woodsmount, please. Nope. Rift Cave, nope. Here, I'll take this one just to delete it. And I'll take this one just to delete it. Because I don't want to do delivery missions. Wait, no, delete that. Here we go. Mount Blaze is okay, I suppose. Store those apples and this and these, this, and this. Good. Oh, dude, I just realized Wish Cave. If Wish Cave is as difficult, it is like the dungeon that I think it is, it's gonna be a fucking nightmare. It might not be so bad because I would only have to get to the 20th floor, I think, but it's one of those dungeons that resets you to level 1, which is annoying. Jujutsu Kaisen, what? Oh, Dragon Ball Z, Hozuki's Cool Headedness, Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, Tokyo Ghoul, Your Name. I see. Jujutsu Kaisen's one I've heard really good shit about. And Demon Slayer, I have no doubt, is good. It's just long as hell. That's not a bad recommendations list though. Not by a long shot. Bulletin board. What do we got? That's two Northern Range. Oh, they're both delivery missions. Lame. Wait. Info? Oh, this is the mission with Smeargle. Howling Forest. My name's Smeargle. I once had aspirations of becoming an artist. Then one day there was an incident of an unforgivable nature. I fled because I didn't want to become an adult. Then I lost my way. Now I find myself in this forest, unable to extricate myself. I'm lost in the Howling Forest. Somebody, please save me. Okay, he wanted to be Peter Pan. Nice. Okay. I wonder what you get when you do this mission. So we'll find out next time. Because I am gonna end the stream there. me go back and save. And that is that. Thank you for, thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm going to have to try to figure out how my webcam situation is going to work. Because right now, when I'm looking at chat, it looks like I'm looking to the left, which is like not towards anything. When I'm looking at the game, it's kind of fine, but yeah, I'll try to figure it out. Let me see who I can raid. And heard about it before. Expected it to be garbage. Hadn't heard about what before. Jujutsu Kaisen. Claude AI. Oh, okay, okay. I mean, all AI is pretty garbo, right? It can just be kind of goofy in the process. Let's raid Livagar. Hope you all enjoyed the new format. I will try to continue this, again, because it makes the politics part of it a lot easier and more enjoyable. Same with the gaming part. So I'll see you guys next time.